So we will begin by saying this is the regularly scheduled Conservation Commission meeting for the town of Norton on Monday, November 28th. The time is now 6:30. And as has been required for remote meetings, we have to read the preamble relating to suspension of certain provisions of the open meeting law. And that will be done by Dan Pearson, beginning now.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Norton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the end of this agenda. Members of the public attending this public hearing/meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by raising their hand virtually or pressing *9 if participating by phone. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Norton Cable website, www.nortonmediacenter.org, an audio or video recording, transcripts, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you, Dan. We actually have a full board tonight, and that consists of myself, Julian Kadish, Chair, Lisa Carosa, Vice Chair. We also have Ron O'Reilly, Carrie Schneider, Tom Avest, Mark Fernandez, and Dan Pearson is not on video. He's on the phone. Did I get everybody? I think I did. And we also have our director, John Thomas, and our assistant, Megan Harrop, participating. Our first item on the agenda, actually there's a correction. The hearing for file number 250-1115 King Philip Road had requested to be moved to first place on the agenda, but subsequently they requested a continuation, and we'll take that up when they come up in their spot on the agenda. And do we have the representative for the treatment program for the various water bodies around town on the meeting?
We do.
Because there was an interest in doing the, okay, so would that be Matt Ladewig?
That's correct. Matt, you have co-hosting abilities, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Let's hope that the presentation comes up. All right. Okay, is that showing up okay?
It is.
Great. All right, thank you everybody for having me tonight. I am just here to give an update on the Lakes and Ponds annual management program on behalf of the town of Norton. We're going to give you a few observations from this year's program and then follow up with some recommendations for next year. Just an overview of the monitoring that we do. This is required for Winnicott. It's required by Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as well as the Conservation Commission. And for Chartley and Norton Reservoir, it's required by the Conservation Commission that we do an annual update, an annual report on the vegetation management actions that we're taking in each of the ponds. So this monitoring consists of two primary components. One is water quality monitoring at Winnacunnet Pond, required by Natural Heritage. We do this in treatment years from May to October. And then second, two vegetation surveys at each water body, essentially consisting of a pre-treatment or pre-management vegetation mapping in May or June, followed by post-treatment vegetation mapping in September. So just to give you an overview of the water quality results we collected at Winnacunnet Pond, really we're just testing here for dissolved oxygen. That's the main concern on Natural Heritage's part. So we completed 9 monitoring events from May to October. The dissolved oxygen concentrations were actually sufficient to support aquatic life throughout the water column in May, and then most of the late summer to October. We did have a short portion of the summer from June to early August where we did have dissolved oxygen concentrations drop below 5 milligrams per liter, which is considered hypoxic or low dissolved oxygen. Generally 5 milligrams per liter is what's required to support warm water fisheries. But this was less severe than last year, and last year actually was not a treatment year. So we do have baseline monitoring from last year. We actually saw a little bit of an improvement in dissolved oxygen. So ultimately, really no negative impacts detected from the treatments this year. The management actions that we took in 2022 consisted essentially of a sonar treatment at Winnacunnet Pond. That was the primary treatment that occurred this year, lasted 3 months, May through July. And then at Norton Reservoir and Chartley Pond, we undertook a combination of herbicide treatments and hand harvesting to control the species there. Now I'm just going to give you sort of an overview of some of the maps that we collected over the course of the year from the pre-treatment and post-treatment observations. I'll breeze through most of these, but I just want to kind of focus on Winnacunnet Pond because this is where we had the most interesting results, actually. First off, I'm going to show you a map of fanwort, which was the primary species that we had in Winnacunnet back when we first started this program way back when in 2016, 2017. You can see the pre-treatment conditions were not too bad, although fanwort is a late emerging species, so this map is probably not super representative of what it would have been later in the year if we had gone out later and not treated. But the main takeaway here is by September, we couldn't find fanwort in the ponds, so the treatment seemed to be successful for that species this year. The story is a little more complicated for this next species, variable leaf milfoil, which has actually now become sort of the dominant invasive species in Winnacunnet Pond. Here you'll see on the left the pre-treatment conditions. All the orange and yellow is sort of sparse to dense beds of variable leaf milfoil. So we had plenty of it in May. And then looking at September, we had a reduction definitely, very little to none on the eastern shore of the pond. But we did have some beds that persisted in the western and southern shorelines. And so this is not really what we'd hoped for. We're hoping to get a little bit better control, similar to what we had the first year that we tried this. And there are a couple of potential explanations here, and I'll come back to this towards the end of the presentation just to sort of inform you on what we think the best way forward is for next year. The other piece of news for Winnacunnet is we actually discovered 2 new invasive species. One is brittle naiad. It's actually a smaller annual species. It's not great to have, but it's not that easy to manage, and it is actually, doesn't really interfere with recreation as much as some of the other weeds, so it's a little harder to notice. The good news is the treatment that we did, the sonar treatment this year, is effective on brittle naiad. So you can see here in September, we had detections, but the beds were fairly sparse. So with all these green beds are really just a few plants in those areas. The other new species that we found this year, and I suspect it was actually probably present last year, just the timing of the surveys that we did last year didn't allow us to catch it, is curly leaf pondweed. This is another annual species, but much bigger than than brittle naiad, and definitely noticeable in May and June when it comes to the surface. So this is one we got to keep an eye out for. The good news again here is sonar should be very effective on curlyleaf pondweed. So we think we probably killed the plants that were popping up this year. The only issue is that they reproduce from seed, so they will probably come back to some degree in future years, and we may be living with curlyleaf pondweed going forward. But it's a species that's present in lots of other places in Norton, as well as upstream. So I think it was just a matter of time before it got to Winnacunnet. Okay, so that was Winnacunnet. Norton Reservoir, we have pretty much just good news for you. I'll just kind of breeze through these maps, and if anybody has questions, we can come back to them in more detail, but I want to try to get through the presentation and be respectful of your time. Here you can see variable leaf milfoil. We actually had pretty good control this year. June to September, we had definitely a reduction in the extent of that plant in Norton Reservoir. Same thing with the curlyleaf pondweed, even though we wouldn't expect much to be up in September. I think we're actively treating that in Norton Reservoir, and it's not really getting out of control there for the most part. Water chestnut, we've been hand harvesting this to date. You can see on the left here, we had a few beds of sparse to medium, maybe a few dense patches early in the season. We're able to harvest most of those pretty successfully, just a few leftover plants in some of the southern sub-basins in September. And then fanwort, this map actually looks worse than it is. So on the left, we're showing no fanwort. But again, remember, this is a late emerging species that really doesn't get going and pop up all the way into the water column until late July, August, and then by September, it really is the one that tends to be the most noticeable. So by the time we were out there, it was really up where it was growing. But the good news is this is actually a decrease year over year, and we've seen a steady decrease in fanwort over the last few years in Norton Reservoir. So I think even though it's not completely eradicated, and that's probably not possible, we have gotten a better handle on control of fanwort in Norton Reservoir. And then finally on the chartleaf, we had, it's a little shallower where the beds occur in chartleaf, so we're able to see the fanwort come up. We did the initial series a little later in the season. We also had better mapping from last year to kind of show where they were. So we had pretty good control here of fanwort this year, really nothing showing up in the post-treatment maps. Variable leaf milfoil, same thing, very little recurring growth in September after the treatment. And water chestnut, a little tougher to get into some of those shallow spots in the western side of the pond, but overall the hand harvesting has kept it at bay. We still have an uphill battle there, but I think we're at least holding the line for the most part, water chestnut. And this chart just shows a summary of our progress to date, kind of updated every year. The main thing to see here is in 2017, when we first started this program, we had a lot of the red dots. We got rid of a lot of those right away. We've had a few blips in the road, but for the most part, we're making pretty good progress at least holding the line, if not improving against these invasive species year over year, or year after year. The main exception now, of course, being brittle naiad and curlyleaf pondweed coming into Winnacunnet Pond, so we got to keep our eye on that. But hopefully we'll be able to get some control of those. All right, so getting to what do we recommend for doing next year? And again, focus here is really on Winnacunnet. I think Norton Reservoir, Chartley Pond, we stick with what we've been doing. We're making progress, or at least holding the line, so that seems to be pretty effective. At Winnacunnet, the question has come up of why didn't the variable leaf milfoil treatment work this year? We got good control of fanwort, but not variable leaf. There's a couple of possible explanations. One is that a lot of the persisting beds were close to where we have the highest amount of flow coming in, so it could be a dilution issue with the herbicide just not getting the contact time at the right concentrations to be able to really take that plant down. The other question that comes up is, do we possibly have some resistance developing in the variable leaf milfoil population? That's always a concern that could be raised when you have plants that were responding in the past that are no longer doing that. the good news is we're kind of at a place where we could make a change if we wanted to. There is another herbicide available that we've actually used at Chartley called Procelicor, and it is actually really effective on variable leaf milfoil and not effective on most other things. So it's kind of a nice precision tool that we could potentially add to our toolbox for 2023. The hitch there is we would need to get natural heritage approval to do that. So we've started making inquiries. I don't have anything to report to the commission at this point on progress. That is something to watch out for 2023 as a possible solution to that issue. Key takeaways for the year, really, I think our 2022 program was very effective on most of the established invasive species we have. Again, the main exception was variable leaf at Winnacunnet. We did get some control, but just not as much as we'd like to see for a treatment of that kind. And we may have the option to try to target that species next year, but Natural Heritage will have to sort of make the first call before we can bring it before the commission to, potentially approve the use of that herbicide in Winnacunnet. We also have those 2 new invasive species in Winnacunnet to keep our eye on. Hopefully we got some control this year from the sonar treatment, but we won't really know until we go back out and map again next year. And then for 2023, just recommend keeping up the momentum on the actions that are working while we also adapt our approach to meeting the new challenges. So with that, open up to any questions or comments. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thank you, Matt. Anyone on the commission have questions for Matt?
Yeah, I just had a quick one. I'm wondering, Matt, if you could just speak to the potential sources of the new invasive species that you spoke about, Naiad, and I forget the name of the other one. What ways might they be introduced into those water bodies?
Yeah, brittle naiad and curly-leaf pondweed. Well, there's a couple of different routes. Obviously, there's a boat launch on Winnacunnet. A lot of people coming in and out. Boats tend to be a pretty strong vector of invasive species. If people aren't cleaning off their props or trailers, that's one way that they can get in. But the trick there with Winnacunnet is a lot of the people coming into it would have to come up under the bridge and then into the pond with all that flow going out of the pond. So it's definitely a potential and probably a likely source of some of the invasives. Whether that's how these got in there or not, I don't know. The other sources could be upstream sources just floating down and starting a population, which you don't really have much control over, or wildlife. But for these 2 species, wildlife is not really that strong a vector.
Great. Thank you.
So, John Thomas, don't we have signs? I thought the water body committee had posted signs about cleaning.
We do. They're there. The signs are there.
Okay. So they're just not paying attention to them. So Matt, you mentioned something about the launch area. Can you go back to the screen to show us where it is currently? And I'm thinking, do we need a different location for the launch area? Could that abate some of it, or?
Are you talking about where the public access is for launching boats?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
are you talking about for the treatment areas where they launch the boats?
Well, no, Matt just mentioned that the launch area logistics with the high flows.
Yeah, I mean, this is a common occurrence issue that I was dealing with when I was the agent over in Sharon too with Massapog. It's an issue. You can put up signs, you can post whatever you want, but the biggest issue is whether people comply with the rules and regulations. It's something that I will be needing to take up with the town internally on ways to mitigate this kind of thing in the future, whether it's going to be revising our boat and waterways bylaw to not have inboard engines because those jet propulsion systems are they can really do damage to the water bodies more so than a prop does. So that's kind of something that Sharon did. And for, I guess, maybe 10 years when they outlawed them, they had increase or a decrease in the type of species that were being of a concern for the water bodies. So it does play an effect, like Matt has indicated. it's just something to take into consideration for, I guess, a boat and waterways committee in the future to prevent this. And that way, for instance, the town doesn't have to have this, level of treatment be the normal. So.
Oh, the other thing I was just following up on was Matt's comment about the launch area itself.
Oh, the one over by Juniper?
Yeah, you mentioned that it's in a location with high flows, Matt?
Oh, okay, you're talking about Winnicott then.
Yes, yes.
I don't think I'm still in the screen share.
Oh, sorry. I must have
So I was
stopped
just
you.
wondering what the downside of that is, and is it worth the effort to explore a new launch location?
The downside for Winnicott is not huge. I mean, I think it keeps certain people actually from being able to access the pond if they can't clear the bridge. It's not great for people who are downstream on the Snake River because it sends things flowing down that way.
Yeah.
But it's also not a long enough stretch that you really have, all that debris cleaned off before the boats can get into Winnicott. So if there is any benefit from it for Winnicott, I think it's rather minimal.
Okay, thank you.
And just a quick question, Matt, do you think the difficulties with the oxygen levels were made worse by the drought this summer?
That's a good question. I guess I would say since we have good baseline data from last year, and last year wasn't a severe drought year like this one, and we had actually better dissolved oxygen levels this year, it's hard for me to say that the drought really had much of an impact specifically on dissolved oxygen levels in Winnicott. It's kind of difficult to say.
Yeah.
Definitely a possibility. Ideally we would want to have dissolved oxygen all the way down to the bottom, so the whole pond would be fish habitat, right, the entire summer.
All right, any other questions from the commission? And if not, we can consider questions from members of the audience if there are any. And if there are no further questions, thank you, Matt. And we'll look forward to your report next year.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is new public hearings. We don't have a file number yet, but this is a notice of intent for 70 and 78 East Main Street. And it will be the site of the new town hall. Do we have a representative of the town on this item?
Good evening. Scott Lingren representing the town. I'm with VHB. I'm the civil engineer, project manager. And we also have Scott Hobson, who can introduce himself.
All right.
Yes.
And I'm assuming one of you has screen sharing
Yeah.
for the plan.
Both Scotts have screen sharing capabilities, so either one of you can share your screen.
Sure. I'm going to start, and then Scott, the other Scott, is going to jump in and talk about the resource. I'm going to give an overview of project for the board here. So,
Scott, before you start, I just want to
Yes.
let you know that I'm still in talks with a peer review consultant for the stormwater.
Okay.
It's been kind of hectic to find one at this time of season, so we're still trying to secure a peer review consultant to finalize the stormwater peer review.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
That's perfectly fine.
Yep.
Great. So does everybody see my screen here? I'm assuming.
I can.
All right, great. So thanks for having us this evening. Again, Scott Lindgren with VHB, Civil Engineering Project Manager. We're here to talk about the Town Hall project, as you had stated. With me here today is Scott Hobson from my office as well. He is our environmental manager, and we'll be talking a little bit about the resource areas and the impacts and a little bit about those elements of the project. And I just want to make mention that this project is in conjunction with DVVW Architects, who I'm sure you've heard of, and obviously from the Senior Center, and also IDI Landscape Architects. So, sure, everybody is familiar with the site, but I want to give a context overview of where we are on a high level for the aerial image. As you can see, you can see my cursor. We have right in the center of the site here is the existing town hall and the fire station. Adjacent to the right is the existing police station, and the DPW is in the rear. As you're aware, the town had acquired the parcel in between, and the area that we're going to be talking about encompasses that new parcel, the redevelopment around the fire station, existing town hall, and also the new town hall, which sits centrally located between the fire and the police, but set back in front of the DPW, approximately right around in this area, and you'll see in a second. So this is the plan for the limits of work in terms of the town hall. As you can see, the existing fire station along East Main Street and the existing town hall. The existing town hall is going to remain. There is a small addition, older addition that is going to be torn down as part of the redevelopment, but the main building of the existing town hall will remain attached and adjacent to the fire station. In the open parcel in between the old existing town hall and the police station is going to be a parking field for the new town hall patrons. And then, as you can see, the new town hall, which is about 14,400 square feet in footprint area, is located centrally, and there's an employee parking lot to the left of the town hall. Overall, the redevelopment of this town property encompasses redevelopment of around the fire stations for better access and their parking needs and activity needs, a redevelopment of the existing parking in front along East Main Street, and then a new parking lot for the patrons to the town hall that's located in the front with access to the front door. As you can see here, there's generally a nice front entry. We have a large front entry with many landscape elements associated with the entry there. And then, as I said before, we're going to have employees parked and town hall vehicles parked to the left of the town hall with a separate employee entrance. The access points are a little bit changed for the town hall. We're proposing a new curb cut off of East Main Street, located right at this red dot here, in between the police station and the existing town hall, where patrons would enter and have access to the parking lot associated to the town hall to the left. The fire station access points are going to remain as they are currently. And then there is also an alternative secondary access that's being bid out right now or in the future for emergency purposes that connects to the DPW access road on the right side of the police station. But this main access off the East Main Street is the main access for the town hall. There is, I'll just give an overview of, we're talking a little bit about stormwater as questions come about, but as John had indicated, the review hasn't started yet, but we've got stormwater rain gardens associated with the new parking areas in the town hall, adjacent to the right and to the center here. And we have a new proposed infiltration system for the parking lot and some portion of the town hall to the underground here. Part of what we'll talk about today is the septic system. Currently, the septic system is located for the existing town hall, fire, and DPW in this woodland area. That's centrally located, sort of right where this red dot is. And obviously is inadequate to today's regulations and codes. And we are looking to upgrade that system. And that system is located a little bit further to the north, adjacent in this located area here. And I'll stop there just generally because I know I want to get Scott Hobson to talk a little bit about the resource areas and some of those elements as we're getting to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Scott, you want to jump in and give some overview.
Yep, be glad to, Scott. If I can get this to work, we'll be just fine. Are you seeing this at all?
Yeah, expand that out.
Is that working, Scott? You're seeing the map?
Yes,
Okay.
you may have to zoom in a little bit.
Yep, I certainly will. So good evening, everyone. Good to see you again. And as Scott introduced, I'm Scott Hobson, a wetlands biologist with VHB out of the Providence office. Scott gave a broad overview, and my purpose here will just be to go into a little bit more detail on the wetland resource areas and what the project is actually proposing within those jurisdictions. So again, just for reference, we have the Norton Fire Department up front here to the left, police station to the right, and Public Works in back. The orange polygon represents the project limits that Scott had just shown you. Just a little bit more detail under here. And I apologize, my graphics are a little bit more rudimentary than Scott's. We'd consider the primary wetland feature on this to be the Rumford River, and that generally on this screen flows from left to right. And it's in a fairly deep topographic linear corridor, which I'll get into a little bit more, but we'll speak very important volumes regarding floodplain and floodway, et cetera. So zooming in a little bit here, you can see the channel depiction. And then this blue inner line is our delineation of the mean annual high water line. And out there, it was pretty well defined, strong abutting banks, and the mean annual high water line was depicted by basically drift lines, rack lines, scour evidence, leaf orientation, rooted vegetation orientation. And again, stayed within that channel embankment. The abutting green line is a bordering vegetated wetland edge. That was delineated in a combination of the 3 parameter with soil augering to make sure that it didn't jump up into a little bit of a topographic bench that is above the actual channel embankment. And then the magenta line is the floodplain depiction, and you can see that stays pretty close to the channel itself. And then all 3 of those depictions continue this way. And we stopped behind this parcel, so when we put a 90-degree off of it, our delineations would end at that adjacent property line. So in taking a 25-foot no-touch off the green line here, the bordering vegetated wetland edge, is this yellow line. The outer yellow line is a 100-foot buffer zone from the same green line, the BVW edge. And then as you can see from this orange polygon, the entire project will be located outside of the 25-foot no-touch and also outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. And then we've added this blue line to represent the 200-foot riverfront area from the blue mean annual high water line. And you can see that we're just clipping the outside edge of some of these activities. So the secondary access road is somewhat into it. You'll note that the existing paved driveway is here. So this activity is going to occur on the upland side of that paved road. What you see here is an upgrade to the existing drainage line, and that's going to be a cut and cover operation in pavement. So this protrusion is proposed within riverfront area, but again, within pavement. And then Scott had mentioned the proposed leaching field, which was sited to keep the existing septic system functioning while the town hall, the new building, is being constructed. So folks in the existing town hall can remain, and all the other supporting buildings, remain active. And just that corner is going to clip the riverfront area as well. So we have included with a filing technical documentation for everything I just described, and also the potential impacts to the riverfront area, how they meet the regulations. And you'll also note that in addition to the notice of intent filing, we're also seeking authorization for the local stormwater permit. So that's all included in our filing documentation. Actually, I'll go up here a little bit. You'll notice we have the entire outside property line, and we don't quite have it shown on this plan. So I just included the existing conditions survey so you could see that that goes out to Elm Street, and for reference, the library and the fire station. And then the next sheet is an existing conditions survey of the remainder of the parcel. And the main takeaway here is just to give you an idea of how this river corridor is down in a topographic, almost a ravine when you get down to this part of it, but then some pretty good relief up to the north as well. So the floodplain remains, like I had said, within that corridor, doesn't jump up the banks. So the riverfront area proposed impacts are site elevated, a fair distance above the actual riverine corridor. And no work is proposed on the pavement side of that corridor in the existing forested cover. So from a wildlife standpoint, that wildlife corridor will remain unimpacted by the project. And just another way of showing what those riverfront area impacts are proposed as. Here's the secondary access road, and I have put all the existing pavement and impervious in that tan color, and the more yellowish cover is the rooftop of the DPW building. So you can see there's a fair amount of impervious surface already. This proposed encroachment in riverfront area, as I mentioned, will be on the upland side of the existing access road. Currently, it functions essentially as a landscaped island in the existing public safety facility. So there is an oak and two small pines in here. Those would be proposed to be cleared, but it's essentially existing in weedy cover, some maintained grass that's probably weed whacked. I do have pictures available if you care to see those at the end of the presentation. And then the drainage line upgrade from a existing 15-inch pipe to a proposed 24 will occur within the pavement area. And that is a cut and cover operation. So we are considering that to be exempt. And all that documentation is in our technical write-up. And then the proposed leaching field is going to be proposed inside the existing tree line. Again, its location has been cited here to keep this existing system active through construction. We looked at a bunch of different alternatives, rotating this, pulling it back. We really saw no advantage to the proposed encroachment within riverfront area. Every alternative we looked at was similar in square footage. So this will be proposed in a mixed deciduous coniferous forested area. I think a main thing here to note is that the existing pavement in this area is a lot further away than this, such that there won't be a constriction in that riverine corridor for wildlife usage. The closest distance from this to the mean annual high water line will be 165 feet. The closest to the secondary access road will be 131 feet. So everything is proposed within that outer from 100 to 200 feet, that outer portion of riverfront area. And again, this is all noted in our documentation. And another way to look at the total riverfront area is in this graphic. So the grayed area represents the existing riverfront area on the parcel. And from that, we could glean the percentage that we're impacting. And in taking the square footages of these two areas, we're looking at 0.64% of impact to the existing riverfront area. So from a performance standpoint, we're well under the 10%. In terms of the 5,000 square foot encroachment standard, we're at 3,700 total in riverfront area. So the project meets both prongs of that criteria in the regulations. And again, we feel the need has been justified in our written documentation. And with that, I will leave it up for questions.
All right, thank you. Questions from members of the commission? And
I do have a few. If we can go back to the figure that shows the flood zone, is that an AE zone? Is that an
It is. Yep.
And what elevation is that?
Oh, I had that by heart, and I'll have to look that up.
Okay, but so it was from an AE.
Well, what?
Just an AE.
Yeah, one thing that happens here, the FEMA has the flood mapping, but they also have the cross sections. So the mapping tends to be, as you know, just a depiction, a representation. So what we did was look into the cross sections and then take the actual topography and found that elevation. Excuse me, I'm on the wrong one.
Oh,
You can see this, I have to blow it up beyond the
Yep.
the viewport here. So basically, let's see, at the 74, and then that drops a little bit as it gets downstream. So you can see the existing contours. It stays well at the bottom of that bank. And there is I didn't mention this, there is also floodway associated with this, and that stays within the AE zone. So as you know, floodway indicates that this river flows pretty quickly at times in severe storms.
Right.
And the project will be well upland of that.
Right. Okay, so let's look at the second access road there. Is that an access road for DPW, for Public Works Garage, or?
That's for, on-site circulation for also the public works, but also for emergency purposes for the fire department and police department.
Oh, I see.
It gives a circulation for the campus is what is the intention.
Okay, so you couldn't use the existing road that's already behind the police station looks like nope, that right. There you go,
Right there.
In here?
Yeah,
So,
so you couldn't
yeah.
use that instead, or?
So
is that-
we had many discussions with the emergency departments, both the police and fire. The police department needed to have that isolated and separate for security purposes for their Sally Port and their police officers. So we could not connect the town hall project to that.
Okay. Then I just want to ask about the septic system. So is the other one going to come offline once the new one's constructed, or is that going to stay?
It is going to be abandoned in place. So as you can see there, it's depicted on this plan. If Scott could point to the wooded area right in there, that's where the septic system is now currently. It's a few leaching pits.
Mhm.
So what we're going to be proposing is abandoning that in place to not disturb the vegetation and the trees that have grown around it over the years. And
Okay.
so we're going to fill those in
Okay.
and make sure that they're collapsed correctly. But that has to happen once the new system's online.
Sure.
And so that will be part of the project construction.
Okay, so that's on another set of plans then? Is that on a landscaping plan or something?
That's on the heavier civil
Okay.
septic system design plans that we've sent in to the Board of Health, but also on the engineered utility plans. And if necessary, I could pull those up if you would like to.
So, well, my concern is that it's on the Conservation Commission. It should be on the Conservation Commission set when you go to do the as-built and the COC.
It definitely is on the set.
Okay,
All the set. It was all one set for everybody.
okay,
Lisa,
Okay.
I just picked a few sheets that I thought would be best for the commission to just kind of highlight what we're doing here.
okay.
There are a lot of sheets.
Yeah, there were 30 sheets to the set,
Sure.
so we definitely have that covered.
Okay. And so it doesn't look like, was there just a general question, if there was any opportunity to remove any existing pavement in the riverfront?
The existing pavement for the public works it's not part of the project. So that was the limitation of the any work around the public works was solely for the connection for the septic system. And to make sure that there was no flooding concern with the drainage system. But the public works pavement area, fueling area, and building is not part of the redevelopment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions from members of the commission? And if not, we can ask if there are any questions from the audience. And you can do that in two ways. You can go to the reaction button on your screen and push the raise hand button, or you can just take your mic off mute and identify yourself and ask your question. But I don't see any questions, and so I have a question to John Thomas. It sounds like we still have a continuing discussion for stormwater review, and that this will require continuation.
That is correct.
So unless there are further issues to be discussed now, the question to the representatives of the applicant is, what would be the appropriate next meeting for you to present to us? And the choices are the 12th of December, and the next meeting beyond that is the 9th of January.
Just to give an overview to the board on the other hearings in December. We have a zoning board on the 14th and the planning board on the 20th. I'm not sure, and I maybe put a question to John. The consultant's going to need some time with the stormwater. Do you feel that that's enough time to get them on board to have this on the next agenda, or should we push it?
Well, John can offer better, but I think is the potential consultant, the consultants have been very busy, so the likelihood that anything substantive would happen by the next meeting is pretty low.
I would agree. So
I think it's probably safe to put this on the agenda for January 9th, if that works. Is that our next meeting, Megan?
Yeah, after the December 12th, it's January 9th.
Or John, is there any point in keeping it on the 12th in case there's a miracle? I know the previous review was pretty quick, but I know you're having trouble this time around. Everybody is busy. And then we can just continue.
I sent out another feeler to that consultant too, to see if they were available, but with the holiday, they didn't respond as quickly as normal. So to kind of give you some insight, I mean, we can put it on the agenda for the 12th, and then by a miracle or perchance,
we'll keep in touch and
that's fine.
Continue if need be.
If that works with you.
That would be great if we could do that. As a good suggestion to at least give the opportunity. They were very quick, and if maybe they have a chance to look at it in the next week, we could answer and perhaps be on the 12th.
Yeah, and I think as far as miracles go, there's probably a long list of miracle priorities before it gets to that one. So we will. The next meeting is the 12th. So unless there are further questions or discussion about this hearing, we can consider a motion for continuing this hearing until December 12th.
So moved.
We have a motion made by Dan Pearson and seconded by Lisa. And roll call vote beginning with Lisa and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
and then Carrie and Ron,
Aye.
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So the motion carries. We'll either see you guys on the 12th or act on a further request for continuation. Thank you.
Sounds good, Julian.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next item is an ANRAD request, file number 250-1117, 300 South Washington Street, map 25, parcels 8 through 12, to verify resource areas. And do we have a representative for that project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering, representing Reva for the property today.
And he has screen sharing capabilities?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Let me just find the
Yeah,
plan.
he should.
Yes. Well, that might not be the right one. Bear with me just 1 second and I will get this underway.
You bet.
Okay, can everyone see that plan?
Yes, we can, but you'll probably have to blow it up a bit.
Yeah, I'll have to zoom in quite a bit. You know, I'm going to zoom in on the locust first, just to give an orientation as to where we are here. If you can see the locust in the corner, this is the Miles Standish Industrial Park through here in Taunton. This is actually on the Norton side of it, right up against Route 495. There's this little knob of the project that's in Taunton, but obviously we are just focused on the Norton portion today. So we're right on the boundary of 495, which does a lot for us in butters and things of that nature. Zooming in on the site, let me see if I can make that bigger. That's a little bit bigger, and we can zoom more through there. So we do have this piece of property right on South Washington Street, sandwiched between South Washington Street and Route 495 here. It is completely vacant land except for a billboard that's there now. It's a very old-fashioned, kind of outdated billboard. The entirety of the site is located in ACEC. There is this odd bubble of priority habitat that cuts into the site on the western side here. And a portion of the site, I believe, is located in a zone 2. We have obviously filed with you folks to confirm the wetland boundaries, and we basically have a BBW smack in the middle of the western half of the site, let's say, which is delineated through flags, the A series flags and the B series flags. There's quite a grade difference between the roadway and the wetland boundary that's here. It drops off by about 10 feet or so into the wetland, so the wetland is very, very well defined. And aside from that, the site is relatively flat. Up along Route 495, there is a resource area that is defined by some standing line that's basically resulted from stormwater runoff from the highway being caught up in the shoulder of the roadway there, but it is a resource area nonetheless. So we've defined it on the plan by the stain line that's there. And really, that's it for resource areas. Just pretty much one big BBW on the western portion of the site that we'd like confirmation on the boundary of. I don't know if your agent has had an opportunity to visit the site yet, so I will obviously leave that to him, but we are glad to conduct the site walk with you folks anytime.
John, you want to comment on the visit or not?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I went out here. I actually didn't have my auger at the time, but I took a walk through and came back with my auger, and I had some ideas as to flag changes, but then after checking the soils, I did not really see any flags that needed to really be changed, but based on my visual observations, there was hydrophytic vegetation that was growing up gradient those flags, so that's what was concerned for me. But after checking the soils and looking at the soils in more detail, I can see where the wetland consultant that was hired with as part of this project made the same kind of assessment and evaluation. So as part of this, guest confirmation, the flag placements for the BBW locations for this ponded area, which presumably is the creation of some sort of 495 creation back, I don't know, probably in the 60s or 50s, whenever 495 was created for stormwater management practices. So that's kind of my thought towards this project, and I don't have any issues with the flag placements as they are.
Do you think the wetland being so well defined is a result of prior gravel excavation? Is that
I'd say that's
possibly-
probably part of the thing here, because it does look like there was some sort of gravel operations here. It does seem like there were some sort of fabrications or machine activity that was out there previously, probably predating me. Obviously a lot of this stuff probably occurred in either the 50s or 60s.
In the upland area, how much acreage is that? It looks, I mean, I can't really calculate it, but it looks pretty small. Is that, Eric, you have a comment about that?
I don't have an exact number off the top of my head. It appears to me to be about 1.5 acres or 2 acres if I'm eyeballing it, just based on some of the math shown on the plan. But it's not big, and most of it is still within 100-foot buffer zone. So I'm very confident that just about anything that the client tries to do on this will be back before you folks with a notice of intent.
Yeah. Any questions from commission members or even anybody else? So it sounds like this is fairly well defined as far as the wetland resources, and it sounds like we may have all the information we need. Does that sound right, John?
Yes, I would be comfortable with the commission making closing this project this evening.
So looking for any final questions or discussion, and if not, we can consider a motion to close with regard to file number 250-1117.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing for file 250-1117.
Second.
Motion made by Lisa and seconded by Tama. Roll call vote beginning with Ron and Lisa.
Aye.
And Lisa, did you get something in there?
Yeah, it was the same time as Ron.
An
Sorry.
aye? Okay. And Mark and Carrie
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. The motion carries. We'll be generating a notice of resource area delineation within by our next meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Eric. And
Thank you.
our next scheduled continued public hearing is for file number 250-1115. This is notice of intent for 0 King Philip Road, and we previously mentioned they had requested a continuation. They didn't specify how far in advance? So I'm assuming,
It was till January 9th, was it not, Megan?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. So we're looking for a motion for continuation of that hearing until January 9th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by Lisa. So again, roll call vote, starting with Ron and Lisa
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Carrie
Aye.
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so motion carries. King Philip Road hearing is continued until January 9th. We have next file number 250-1070, notice of intent 0 rear Eddy Street. And I'm presuming we have a representative. It looks like Tim will be the representative tonight.
Yes, good evening, everyone. For the record, Tim McGuire from Goddard Consulting here on behalf of SureCorp, Sam Wydeck. So we previously have been before you over the past few years for this project. We understand that we're now experiencing quorum issues moving forward regarding it. So after having discussed a strategy with John Thomas on how to best push this project forward, we've decided that we are going to request for the commission request to withdraw all proposed work on the project at this time, to come back with a new submittal later on in the future. However, we would like to change the scheme of the project to seek a resource area delineation on this. It's a bit of an unconventional strategy to go with a notice of intent, but it is permissible under the Wetlands Protection Act. We have paid over the required fees under Category 6 for confirmation of resource areas on site. So we are seeking to close out the hearing tonight with the issuance of an ORAD for this project. So we have previously discussed the issues regarding riverfront area and come to a conclusion on that with the commission, as well as floodplain, and the wetland line has been reviewed in the field previously. So again, we're seeking to withdraw proposed work at this time and seek an ORAD on this. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
All right. Commission members have questions?
John Thomas, is that allowed? I mean, they didn't do the paperwork to request an ANRAD, right? It's a notice of intent.
Yeah, so the thing is, with a notice of intent, there is a Category 6 portion of that where you can confirm resource area. The interesting part of this is there's no work going to be issued with this project. And, I understand the intent of it would be an order of conditions with no work. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be it's technically an ANRAD ORAD situation, but we'd still issue an order of conditions. We just would not have any work associated with it. So it would just be the confirmation of resource area. Technically, it's allowed because under Category 6, you can do that. It's just like Tim has indicated, it's a unique kind of scenario because typically you would want to come in with an ANRAD to confirm the resource areas. You don't see this very often, but this was kind of something that, to, I guess, kind of try to get away from the quorum issues, this can be done. It's kind of something that doesn't typically happen.
We have the sufficient information and the legal structure in order to do that.
Yes, I mean, we have all the information that the applicant has presented to confirm the resource areas. Now, there are some, ideas that I have with modifying some of the plans and language that are on the plans that I indicated in my comments on the digital platform that we use. But, besides that, it is something that we can do, yes.
So, question for Tim, I'm assuming doing that has the advantage with regard to going forward for you of having resolved some of the questions that were discussion issues previously. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, we did. We spent a substantial amount of time discussing the mean annual high water and the boundary of the river, if and where riverfront should be drawn from. We did achieve some informal agreements on that throughout the hearing process with you guys, with the commission. We're just hoping to walk away from this with that confirmed in an ORAD. So I believe we've satisfactorily met all concerns the commission's had regarding how we estimated floodplain, the location of all wetland flags, as well as our estimation of where the perennial stream should be considered such.
So to procedurally define this, the applicant does have the right to get that decision then. And we can't deny them that. Is that a fair statement, John?
That's a fair statement. I mean, like I said, this would be an issued order of conditions with no work, but it would serve as an order of resource area delineation.
All right. So any further questions or discussion? And that includes any questions from members of the audience.
So there are some minor plan changes that I recommend, Tim, for this. I can go over them right now, just to kind of put them on the record. So let me just pull it up. So I guess on the first sheet for the rim plan set, you have the center of the pond. I recommend that being changed to the center line of the historic Meadow Brook, because that's what we were asking for as part of it.
Okay.
And then on your main kind of, I guess, GIS map that you have, you should have that plan that you used as the historical reference to assess and evaluate where that, I guess, whatever that was, the 1940s pond was relocated from the USGS map. Have that outline of that pond identified. And then here, I can just share my screen. It's probably easier that way. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so this was the area where you have the green line, which was the proposed location of the perennial stream. You know, there was I guess, a historical pond here prior to that dam being installed at this location here. If you could show that outline there, I think that would provide a little bit more clarity, because this is just ending here and this is ending here. And then show, instead of it saying proposed location, I would probably say historic location, because that's where we were trying to identify and assess and evaluate where the historic center line of that Meadowbrook was previously, before the dam was put in. Does the commission agree with that?
Okay, so through the chair, if I may, John, you're just asking that we essentially change the ortho background to better indicate that historic ponding area.
Yeah, I think that would provide a little bit more clarity as to kind of why this is just abruptly stopping here and then restarting over here. Does that make sense, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can have those addressed very soon.
Okay. Does the commission have any other questions?
So is this the only plan, or do we still have a?
No, they sent us over
Okay,
these plans as well.
okay.
So this is kind of just some of my comments that I had. And then it just kind of, this area here was the area I had questions on, because it abruptly stops here and then restarts over here.
Yeah, and when we pick it up 10 years from now, no one will have a clue as to
Yeah,
why.
exactly. And that's kind of to provide clarity. And, you know, if you do have like the pond outline here shown, just put a little note in here that states where it's derived from and taken from. So that way, anyone, like Lisa said, anyone that picks up the plan 10 years from now, provided that, who knows if I'm going to still be here, but anyway, you know, that's what I'm getting at is, you know, just providing that clarity as to kind of where that information is being taken from.
So
Okay.
just a point of clarification, this is still the same hearing for this project, even though the purpose of it has changed. Is that correct? So those of us who were part of the original discussions aren't able to vote on it.
That's correct. There's
Okay.
they still need to follow the same quorum kind of requirements. So the voting members that are actually on the call this evening, you know, those are the ones that are going to have to make the final judgment on the decision.
Thanks.
I think we have 5 people historically. I'm assuming Dan Pearson is part of that, but
Yeah.
well, maybe 4. Yeah, I guess we have 4 that can vote on it.
So I guess the question that I position to the commission is that, you know, closing this public hearing per those comments that I just made to Tim, you know, we can potentially close that this evening, provided that the commission feels comfortable having them make those changes, or we can wait till the next meeting.
Is DEP
Don, you think
provided with a
it's okay?
Hang on, Lisa, why don't you go ahead first and then
I
Dan?
was just saying, has DEP been provided with this updated set of plans in your strategy?
So these plans were previously submitted to the commission. These are the most recent plans that were submitted, I believe, in August of 2022. I would have to double check to confirm if DEP has, but once the revised plans are complete, we can ensure that they are forwarded to them as well.
Right, but I would want that to happen prior to us closing in case they have a comment, which is how it should work. I mean, I understand they issued a number based on the initial review, but I think they should have an opportunity to comment on this. I mean, because the whole strategy's changed. So, I mean, did they have a comment on the delineation from the get-go, from the beginning? Did they have any comments, John? Do you know?
I'd have to look through the records, to be honest with you. I haven't looked through those. You know, that was from Jennifer when she was here. That was the confirmation that was made. But, you know, the riverfront area was after the fact, and I was present during the time for that one. I don't believe that DEP any comments pertaining to the riverfront area. You know, and also this was not something that they were just confirming the resource areas. So, like I said, this is a unique circumstance. You know, I agree DEP should be notified of the project change. But I think that part of it is that, you know, it's up to the commission to kind of, you know, the surety for whether they want to, you know, wait to the next meeting to issue this. I mean, obviously, you know, that's something that the commission has the right to request of the applicant to make those changes, have the information sent to DEP, and, you know, they can go through that process if that's what they request.
So, if I may, through the chair, I did just double check the state's portal, and there were no technical comments made from DEP at the time that we submitted this.
Mm-hmm. But you haven't submitted this latest strategy request to them, right? This latest, just confirming the boundary.
Correct. Well, part of the notice of intent submittal itself is to confirm the resource areas for that plan, so they would have had the opportunity to opine on what we had submitted then.
Yes, but DEP should always be given the updated set of plans or updated whatever you're preparing for the commission, correct?
Yeah, so Tim, what Lisa's getting at is that all this request information and submittal stuff will need to be forwarded over to DEP's office as part of the process. And, you know, obviously those revisions to the site plans probably should be done before it goes to DEP, probably is the easiest streamlined process. So with that, you know, I would presume, you know, that would be something that you can handle, and that, for instance, you know, we should be able to close this at the next hearing, provided that they don't have any concerns or issues with us moving forward this way.
Sure, I can make sure a copy of the revised plans and the letter, and I can even revise the letter to indicate the dates of the revised plans, et cetera, and I'll make sure that's sent to them as well.
Okay, sounds good. So I think we're in good we're in good position for the next meeting, which is December 12th, right, Megan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and this should not really slow things down. I mean, potentially, I mean, it's not going to be a complicated ORAD that we can potentially vote on after we close as well. I mean, would you say it was going to be difficult to prepare an ORAD on this that we would have ready for the next meeting as well?
I think I can have something prepared for the next meeting to close and also to issue an order at the next meeting at the same time.
So it can't be just a simple order of resource area delineation, then it would have to be.
It has to be what-
It's going to have to be an order of conditions that proposes no work, and it's just going to list out the resource areas that are being confirmed through that order.
or just like
Because
findings.
yeah, because it's a notice of intent filing. It's technically, like I said, an order of resource area delineation, but as part of the form, I have to issue an order of conditions.
All right, but it won't be as elaborate as a order of conditions.
No, it's gonna be
Authorized.
tailored. It's gonna be tailored to the same kind of format that we have with an order resource area delineation.
Okay.
It'll just have findings, just the initial section.
Yes, it's just gonna have findings. Correct.
All right. Fair enough. So, Tim, you're okay with this being continued then until December 12th?
Yes.
All right. So unless there's further questions or discussions, we can consider a motion to that effect.
So moved.
All right. I think Dan got the motion and Lisa got the second. So we have a motion by Dan, seconded by Lisa. Roll call vote, beginning with Ron and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Carrie,
Aye.
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye as well. And so, I guess technically we may have made a misstep, because you're saying that only the 4 members that were present throughout the entirety should have voted on the closure.
Yes. So Tama and Mark should abstain from voting.
As well as Tama, Mark, and Carrie even.
Well, I believe Carrie was part of the. Oh yeah, wait, no, it is. I think it is Carrie. Correct, Megan? Does Carrie need to abstain?
Did I miss
believe
enough meetings?
Carrie, didn't you join in October 2020?
Yes. It
So
was for 2020. I thought I had been here from the beginning, but because I was here for the site walk.
Right. No, I think Carrie was on the commission when this was happening. Correct?
Well, but I thought it began in January of 2020.
I believe it was January of 2021. Because we
Wow.
were going into the second year.
Can you guys help us with that? Either Tim or.
Yeah, I have the DEP portal open still. It was filed January 6th, 2021.
Okay. All right. Well, then we can just make a note in the record that technically Mark and Tama's vote need to be abstentions on the closure. And then we just have to be vigilant on the actual voting on the order. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you,
You bet.
Tim. Thank you, Sam.
So our next item is going to be a request for continuation. It relates to file number 250-1093, notice of intent for 70 Oak Street, requested continuation until December 12th.
So moved.
Motion by Dan and seconded by Lisa. Roll call vote, beginning with Ron and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Carrie,
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so file number 250-1093, 70 Oak Street is continued until December 12th. Our next item is also a request for continuation for file number 250-1114, notice of intent, 306-308 East Main Street, requested a continuance until December 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Dan and seconded by Carrie. A roll call vote, beginning with Ron and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Carrie,
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So the hearing for 306-308 East Main Street is continued until December 12th. We have next file number 250-1113, notice of intent for 0 East Hodges Street, also requesting a continuance until December 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, and I think Carrie slid in the second by a millisecond, starting with Ron and Lisa. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark and Carrie,
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So 0 Hill Street, 0 Hodges Street, 0 East Hodges Street. The hearing is continued until December 12th. Next up is notice of intent, file number 250-1108 for 0 Hill Street. And had they requested a continuance?
They did request a continuance until the
And-
next meeting, correct,
Oh.
Megan?
Yes, just the next meeting, yep.
All right, looking for a motion.
So moved. So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Ron, and who seconded? Who wanted to second?
Second. Dan.
That sounds like Dan. Motion by Ron, seconded by Dan. A roll call vote starting with Ron and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Carrie,
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So 0 Hill Street is continued until December 12th. And now file number 250-1105, notice of intent, Pine Street Cluster. I think we have representative of the applicant for this project.
You do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Forbes from Zenith Consulting Engineers. Just a note, you are used to seeing Claire Hogaboom for these meetings, and she actually double booked herself tonight, and she may be joining in at some point if she can get out. She thought she was going to be on about 7:45 for our other meeting. I am one of the engineers that has worked closely with Claire on this project, so I am familiar with it, but I do have to apologize. There may be some items that, based on continuity with this commission, that I may not be aware of. So I can update you on what's happened since the last meeting. And on essentially, we had the review from Horsley and Witten. And Claire, last week, November 22nd, it looks like, she sent a response to that review letter, the comment letter, and essentially agreed with pretty much everything Horsley and Witten had suggested. One of the now we had to submit some further information on the wetlands crossing itself and the culvert associated with that wetlands crossing. And again, we filed this last week, I believe it was Tuesday of last week, and certainly with the holidays, we didn't expect Horsley and Witten to have a chance to respond to this yet. So we did a covered analysis on that wetlands crossing, and Claire has gone out several times now and looked for stream channels there, and that is, all of that information is stated in her letter, and we look forward to Horsley and Witten having a chance to look at that and digest what we've sent them.
Well, there is a representative from Horsley and Witten
Oh, they're excellent. Thank you. I see that.
available. So Amy, you have some comments?
Sure. Hi, for the record, Amy Ball, senior ecologist with the Horsley Witten Group. As Mr. Forbes said, we did just receive this letter last week. We've had a chance to skim through it, certainly not to digest it. And we agree that for the most part, our original set of comments has been adequately addressed, at least in our minds. We had suggested a couple of findings and or conditions that the commission may consider at some point in issuing an order. The question of the stream stats report and the culvert crossing is still a little bit unclear based upon what we were reviewing. We did have a virtual call with, I think it was just Claire and John Thomas on November 8th. And that's sort of what led them to do some additional analysis. And I think it might make some sense to have either another clarifying call or, as I was speaking to Neil Price, who's our senior hydrogeologist, and who did the lion's share of the comments on the culvert crossing itself. Or it may make some sense to do a site visit with the applicant and the applicant's representatives. We're still a little unclear as to the context of the down gradient 12-inch culvert that's referenced. And I believe there's some photos in this response and in the previous response that leads us to believe that condition has perhaps changed the hydrology that's contributing to what could be or would be an intermittent stream. And I understand they also had, as an applicant's projects team, had done analysis of the stream stats and found that was perhaps inadequate or inaccurate for this particular site. And as Neil put it, this is a strong statement, and that perhaps a little more clarifying information may be needed for us to fully understand the design of the culvert crossing. We will note that they did increase with this, well, at least on paper, the size of the culvert crossing from a 24-inch to a 36-inch. And we're just looking for a little bit more backup on that.
If I could jump in, I think
Sure.
Amy's suggestion is excellent. I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, but even having been to the site on several occasions, I looked at Claire's pictures and she did a great job describing them, but it was still unclear to me. I really had to piece it all together. And
It is hard on the
yeah, it really is. So if the board, if that makes sense to the commission, I think that's the way to go with this at this point. And we can at least show Amy and her team what we found out there, and what we're basing everything on. And I think it will be clear if we can do that, or at least we can come to a consensus if we can do that sidewalk. I think it's an excellent suggestion.
So it sounds like a continuation for the next meeting, but before we consider that, any additional comments or questions from the commission members or even audience members if they want to raise any issues?
I had a question for Amy, and I may have missed the last hearing when you went over this, but we talked about potential no touch to the BBW in the ACEC and that various DEP regions had weighed in differently. Did we get confirmation on that yet?
Well, yes and no, because DEP is not the issuing authority. They kept their response, vague isn't the right word, but they can't really tell us what to do. What they did advise is that it is a discretionary call on behalf of the Conservation Commission, as you're well aware. And that, you know, in circumstances where you have a project that doesn't meet the performance standards under the sort of normal provisions in the Wetlands Protection Act, that you can consider going to another limited project. But again, they do emphasize that it is the Conservation Commission's discretion. And our recommendation in that realm is that if the commission chooses to issue an order of conditions for this, you'll want to weigh in how, you know, the protection of the resource areas. And I think this stream crossing does come into play in that consideration. And then obviously we'd like you to incorporate some findings to that effect about the protected nature of the ACEC. And I think that the applicant's project team has done a very good job of documenting all that in their wildlife habitat evaluation and some of their responses.
So, I mean, it's not the type of stream that you would potentially bridge. It's right. It didn't look like it in the field.
It doesn't look like that. Yeah, well, I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't certainly look like that from most of the pictures that were presented. And I think the one thing that Neil and I had both kind of honed in on is this sort of down gradient, smaller size culvert that appears to be, I've used the word perched, but it means that it's elevated above where the stream bed would be. And that off-site walking path is probably creating sort of a dam situation so that the water has been backed up for however long that path has been there. That has changed sort of the pattern of the hydrology so that it may not be an actual channel itself, but it would be maybe more of a braided situation or a flowed situation that's not as linear.
Okay. I mean, would you recommend that we look at spanning it to avoid impacts, or instead of a culvert situation, which?
Well, what we were looking at and looking to, and this is why the stream stats evaluation came into play, and Mr. Forbes, please feel free to intervene. But the stream stats indicate that a span of about 6 or 7 feet would accommodate what the stream stats output has generated. Now, it seems that there may be some question as to whether or not the contributing watershed to that area is accurate based upon that. So, picture's worth 1,000 words. Site visit might be worth a novel.
Exactly. And we just found when we looked at it, the stream stats was showing approximately 2/3 of the contributing drainage area that stream stats predicted would be contributing towards this culvert actually goes in another direction, and that's based on topography. And it's very clear. There's even there are 2 ponds on site, and we're kind of at a saddle where we're doing our crossing, and the water flows in both directions. So we tried to take a really conservative approach, and that's why we bumped the size of the culvert up to a 36-inch in our last go round. But again, I think if it's okay with the commission, if we could meet Amy and her team at the site, I think we could get a lot accomplished.
There are a couple of questions up on the screen. I think I'm assuming it's a computer named Bob. Why don't you identify yourself and ask your question?
Hi, it's Bob Butler, 133 Pine Street. Question, I believe Claire from LEC mentioned in a previous meeting that the Army Corps of Engineers would need to be involved. And just wanted to see what the status was. I think it was, related to this crossing, obviously. So I just wanted to see if they were involved yet.
I can comment on that. If we were to impact more than 5,000 square feet of upland, then it requires a state DEP permit as well as getting Army Corps involved. And this project has never been proposed for over 5,000 square feet of crossing. In fact, we wouldn't have looked at this option that, in fact, the prior Concom agent asked us to look into doing this crossing. If it had amounted to more than 5,000 square feet, we would not have gone in this direction because of that multi-layered permitting process. So you may have misunderstood. We've never proposed over 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Claire had mentioned that the Army Corps of Engineers would be involved then, because she did say that in a previous meeting. So I'll have to go back and.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think I read someplace in Claire's response, either this letter or the previous one, that they may need to file
A self-verification permit.
a self-verification notification.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question on the board. Patty, if you can, well, I guess it's the computer named Patty, but why don't you go ahead, identify yourself and ask your question.
Hi, this is actually Paul Benninger at 148 Pine Street. Question has to do with, I had asked a question in the previous meeting about, the upkeep of the wetland crossing culvert and how that would be the responsibility of the homeowners association. I'm very familiar with the 12-inch pipe that provides water to that. And, over time, simple maintenance has not been done. There's a tree down right over it that's obstructing water flow. So I'm wondering how much of that type of consideration is going to be brought into the analysis.
Well, the condition of the off-site culvert, it's not on our property. So we literally don't have the right to maintain that 12-inch culvert that's off the site. As far as the maintenance of the crossing would go, what we're proposing, it looks like it's going to be, as you stated, in a homeowners association, and they'll have responsibility for maintaining that culvert, along with the entire roadway system and drainage system and the entire infrastructure of the project. Early meetings with the town, and you may have heard me state at planning board meetings, the DPW director mentioned that there may be a circumstance in which they would want to take the roadways and have the town maintain them. Now, that's certainly up to him in the future, and we're not asking one way or the other. But what we have asked the planning board to do is make it so if he does, since he suggested that, if he does want to take these roadways in the future, give him the ability to do that. And I think it has to do with additional funding for the town for the amount of roadways that they have. But I can't speak for him. So you're right. Most likely it's going to be the homeowners association who's going to be maintaining that proposed culvert.
Okay. Another question I have is, I've seen in the literature provided that the culvert is going to take up 47 feet wide. How long is it actually?
The culvert right now that we're proposing is only a 36-inch wide circular culvert.
Forgive me, the land bridge is 47 feet wide, including the slope barriers. So it is basically, it's a virtual dam that's being constructed.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's why we have to provide that culvert and do a lengthy analysis on that. And that's what we're talking about now. And Horsley and Witten is, in my opinion, doing an excellent job of reviewing everything that we're doing out here. So yeah, I don't know what the length of that crossing is. I don't have the plans right in front of me right now, but I can get you that information for a future meeting.
Okay, because I would genuinely question the 5,000 foot limit.
That's been done with computer drafting, and that's a very accurate estimation of what's going to be impacted. Very accurate. I did it myself.
Based on
the actual area, we calculated the actual area using AutoCAD to determine what that crossing impact would be.
So,
based on surveyors maps and such?
I'm sorry?
Based on actual surveyed studies?
Based on what we're proposing. We have the lines drawn on the plan for what we're proposing. And we can trace around the limits of what we're proposing for impacts there. And then we add in some additional area for being able to construct that within that crossing area that we're saying, the impact area. And that's how we determine it. It's very simple. And I'm sure Amy could attest to that. Once you've drawn it, it's very easy to determine the area that you're impacting. And it is not 47 feet wide. The entire right-of-way is 50 foot wide as we cross that. So that might be what you're looking at, the right-of-way. That's all that is the property upon which the road is constructed. That's 50 feet wide. And what the actual roadway is significantly narrower than that. I believe we're proposing it's either a 24 or 26 foot wide paved width going through there.
And that's the area that's subject to the rule, to the 5,000 square foot rule?
Every single inch every square inch that we're impacting with what our crossing is has been calculated. And it's under 5,000 square feet.
Right, but my question is, does that go to the bottom of the sloped grass areas outside of the roadway?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it's 50.
It includes, I assure you, it includes every square inch and then some, from what's shown on the plans.
All right, so we have a couple more questions, but Lisa, did you have a comment you wanted to make? Or not?
Well, actually, Bob had addressed it because I think at one of the prior hearings, I asked Claire to look into the constructability issue because they were just calculating just based on the footprint, excluding how you would actually build it, which would result in more impacts. But it sounds like they did that.
Yeah, we did. We included an area on either side for that. So yes, it is included. Thank you.
Yeah, those were temporary and permanent impacts as part of that calculation.
Exactly. Thanks.
So we have, Casey Loring, did you still want to ask your question or whoever's on that computer?
Yeah, Casey Loring, 141 Pine Street here. Between Lisa and the other gentleman speaking before me, I think my question was answered as well, so I'm good now.
Okay, and now we have a question on the board from computer labeled as Sharon Donovan. Please identify yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Sharon Donovan. I live at 79 Pine Street. I just had a question. I thought that they were supposed to do a wildlife study, and in researching a little bit more, I found out that there is a priority habitat that's right across the street from where this is going to be built that has endangered species. So I'm just curious if there's going to be a wildlife study.
I can answer that. A wildlife study was done. Claire did one, and it's specifically done. And I am not an expert on this. This is her cup of tea, so I hope I don't misspeak. But that was done on specific areas on what we would be impact, especially the crossing area that wildlife study was done on. And that's been submitted to the commission. So that's available to the public if you'd like to look at that and go over that wildlife study that Claire did.
So just where the crossing is, it's not the whole property?
I believe it addresses certain areas that were impact areas. So please, again, that's not something I put together. So I really don't want to go into too much detail, but please feel free to review that.
Okay, it's with the conservation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the Conservation Commission's website, but you can certainly find it on the Planning Board's website. And I believe Claire submitted that to them approximately in October. So there should be something somewhere around that date that where you'll find that wildlife study. And there very well could be a natural habitat area across the street. There isn't on this site.
Okay.
All right, and then the gentleman on the computer labeled Patty, looks like you have an additional question.
Yes, sir. Just to add on to that, I guess I would question the comprehensiveness of the nature study because I'm speaking from experience. I know for a fact that the back end of my property, abutting the pond, right on the water, which is within 100 feet of the properties being built, we have nesting great horned owls. We have nesting herons. We have mergansers. I guess that's all I want to say.
The mergansers actually came into our house down the chimney, and we've had to take them out a couple of times.
Okay, so it sounds like your house is part of the habitat, huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, perhaps we can ask Claire at the next hearing to give us the highlights of her findings.
I think, yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. She did go over that in great detail with the planning board, but I don't believe she's gone over with you folks yet. So it's an excellent suggestion.
No, she submitted it back in September, and we haven't really had a real, I guess, full meeting to discuss this with the Conservation Commission. So I know the planning board has definitely had numerous discussions. So we're just waiting to hear back from Claire.
Yep.
All right, so Bob, you also have an additional question?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on my question on the Army Corps of Engineers. I believe Amy Ball had responded or replied to that, and I didn't really catch. She said that I think Claire had said that she had to submit something, but I didn't understand if that was for Army Corps of Engineers.
Mr. Chair, I believe what she had indicated is they need to file what is called a self-verification form with the Army Corps of Engineers. It's sort of a notification to the Corps that wetlands are being altered, but that the issuing authority, based upon a sort of an understanding, an MOU between Mass DEP and the Wetlands Protection Act and the Army Corps, anything under 5,000 square feet is handled at the local level on behalf of the state. And then Corps is just notified with this form.
So do you need to hear back from that Army Corps of Engineers just to say we've received that
Um,
notification, and then that kind
And-
of just closes that?
essentially, in my experience, you don't always hear back from the Corps, but you do submit that form. And I believe they include that in their database of some sort.
So the form potentially then notifies the Corps that wetlands are being altered, but they are testifying to the fact that it falls within the less than 5,000 square feet.
Essentially.
Yeah, okay. And of course, that holds you liable with regard to your attestation.
Correct.
Certainly, yes.
All right. So we still have outstanding issues to resolve with regard to the exact design, I guess, of the culvert versus some other design, which may need a field visit to help resolve. So with regard to continuation, are we looking at the 12th or January?
That would certainly be up to Amy and her team's availability. We can certainly get out there between now and the 12th. With the holidays coming up, it probably doesn't make too much of a difference, but if Amy could get out there, we could do this between now and 2 weeks from now.
All right, so we'll continue until the 12th, and if things aren't resolved, we can certainly continue again.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for your patience on this project. I know it's gone on a long time, but I appreciate the thoroughness of everybody's review of this.
So I would ask that even if you hadn't done the site visit yet and you don't have any new information for that, perhaps Claire could take 15 minutes to go over the wildlife habitat evaluation for the public at the next hearing.
I will notify her of that. That's an excellent suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, so we will entertain a motion for continuation of this hearing until December 12th.
So moved.
We have a motion made by Dan, seconded by? Seconded by Ron. Roll call vote, starting with Ron and Lisa.
Aye.
Aye.
Mark and Carrie.
Aye.
Aye.
And Tama and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So we'll see you guys on the 12th, or be entertaining a motion to continue at that time.
Thank you very
Thank you all.
much, Jim. Take care.
Thank you.
We are now finished with our scheduled hearings, and we don't have any requests for certificates of compliance, but we do have an order of conditions on the table for notice of intent for 9 Pratt Street concerning installation of a pool and patio area. I received a copy of the orders, and I'm assuming everybody has those. It's kind of a non-controversial set of orders as far as I'm concerned. Anybody have any comments or questions? And actually, with regard to some of the maintenance issues, maybe we should remember to bring up, relevant to the last hearing, 38, the following conditions are in fact in perpetuity. So I'm assuming that will apply to the maintenance of the structures.
You also have to follow an O&M plan, Julian. That's the biggest thing. So
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be an issue, but with regard to this order, any comments, questions?
No, looks like you're looking for a motion. I will make a motion
I
to
was.
issue the order for 250-1116.
So we have a motion made by Lisa for issuing the draft as submitted and seconded by? Seconded by Ron. Roll call vote. Starting with Lisa and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And Tama and Carrie.
Aye.
And Ron and Dan.
Aye. Aye.
And I will throw in an aye, so the order of conditions for file number 250 -1116, 9 Pratt's Drive is issued as drafted. And our next item is review minutes of.
Can I just ask a question before we jump into that? Did we actually vote to continue 0 King Philip Road, or did we miss that one, or did I miss it mentally?
We did vote. It was actually it was the first vote of our continued public hearings.
Okay.
I mean, that was my impression. Was that everybody else's impression too?
It just feels like ages ago now, but I feel like we said we would get to it when we went down to the hearings, but then I don't remember taking a vote on it. I don't know if Megan can refresh our memories for us.
Yeah, because we had to confirm that they wanted it till January 9th.
Yes. That was it. Yes. So there's no question we did do that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All the zeros are blending together there.
Say again, Lisa, I didn't catch that.
I said all the zeros are just blending together there.
We actually had a discussion about that, the Board of Health agent, the building commissioner, and myself, on how it's very difficult for keeping all of these projects on track when they all have 0 in front of them.
Yeah.
Well, they do have fortunately, we don't have a bunch of projects on the same street. Except for.
You say that now, watch next week where we have 3 of them.
Okay. Well, all right. So next item is Monday, November 14th minutes. We had a full board and I didn't find anything that we needed to change. Anybody have comments, questions, additions?
I guess I do. I have 2 small things. One is on the second page, letter A, and underneath the box says Michael Trowbridge, et cetera, Second line down, end of the line, put in a comma after septic system. And let's see, on the new/old business page, discussion of a potential conservation bylaw. Second line down, John asks the commissions to review. It should be John asks the commission, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So at least you know that it's me on the end of the line and that I haven't been replaced by the pod people.
Okay. Well, think of how it was when there was no punctuation. So.
Chaos.
Yeah? What? Chaos. Oh, I don't know.
Organized chaos, though, right?
All those Roman signs. There's no punctuation. Not even. It's all caps. It's.
Well,
yeah. It becomes.
Not all the time. I mean, sometimes there was a little bit of punctuation. Like you would have a little caltrop-shaped thing where the engraver, like on a tombstone, is the thing I can think of first, where they, they would separate words like that. But
All
there,
right. Well,
I won't give you a lecture.
Yeah, each road sign became a puzzle. So we have a couple of tiny corrections brought forward, and so on the amended draft, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 14th, 2022 minutes as discussed.
Second.
Motion made by Lisa, seconded by Ron. A roll call vote starting with Lisa and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And Tama and Carrie.
Aye.
Aye.
And Ron and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. Our next item is a report from staff, etc.
So I guess, two major items, we can pass on the bylaw and the fee schedule for right now. But the two major items to consider are setting up a conservation fund for the Conservation Commission, in line with helping us purchase land, maintenance, or capital improvements to such land, monitoring of conservation restrictions, expenses directly related to land purchases, things of that nature. To help us out with managing the numerous 1,900 acres of land, open space land that we currently are in charge and managing here in town. So that was just a thought. And also, part of that money that would be part of that fee schedule would go to that conservation fund to help support the management of the lands that we preserve and protect for open space and recreational values here in town. And secondly, the kayak agreement. I sent over some additional information to the commission. The town manager is looking for the commission's, response to that, whether they're okay with the fee that they're proposing for said use and lease agreement.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the fee had been as substantial as it was even last year. So I guess that's an enterprise that's working well, and that's good news.
So I just need a vote of approval of the land lease agreement for the Norton Kayak to be utilizing that space. And then I guess we can have discussions on whether a conservation fund at this time is something that the commission wants to pursue.
All right, well, why don't we deal with the Norton Kayak lease, looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Ron,
Second.
seconded by Dan for approval of the Norton Kayak Company lease. Roll call vote starting with Lisa and Mark. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And Tama and Carrie?
Aye.
And Ron and Dan?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye as well. So the motion carries. And then, this fund is not directly tied to the Wetland Protection Act then, is that correct?
It is not, because I can't use wetland protection funds to maintain properties of the lake. It's only supposed to be used for enforcement purposes and for me to pursuing my job as an agent. This is more to benefits of the public and community for management and upkeep of the properties that we currently are in possession of or are managers of.
And is this something that members of the public can make charitable contributions to?
Yes, this is correct.
And because it's a municipal fund, it's automatically approved as a tax deductible charitable contribution, or is
yes,
that
it would be. It would be, yes. And if the commission is interested in looking at this more, I have provided on our digital platform a kind of a Conservation Commission fund example from MACC, how they outline everything. I've even listed the pages where you can read up on it. I don't want an answer this evening. I'd like everyone just to kind of read up on it and kind of look at, see what the benefits it can provide. But I just wanted to kind of give the commission a little bit heads up as how this could benefit us and the community in the future.
How are we paying for the maintenance of land right now under our jurisdiction?
Through grants and through other opportunities that present themselves. The only thing that I have right now is the Edith Reed funds for that property. I don't have any funds for any sort of baseline monitoring documentation or anything like that for the properties. Other 34 CRs that we have, and a conservation fund could supply that. Additionally, for other properties, for enhancements, whether we wanted to create a adequate parking lot or something like that in the near future, those are definitely something that we can pursue through grant opportunities, through donations, through additional funding. But the conservation fund is more generalized, as we don't have to use it for specific things. We can use it for certain properties that we're looking to enhance.
Well, to my mind, it's hardly a controversial proposal. I tend to think.
Is it one of those funds that perhaps the select board would ask us to contribute to the general fund like they do?
So this one is not something that I think they would be able to touch.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, obviously, here's where it comes kind of just to kind of give the commission some ideas. Is currently what happens is they touch the Wetlands Protection Act funds to pay part of my salary. So that's what they ask for at the end of the year. They ask for a sum of money to supplement my stipend that goes with my stormwater review as part of the stormwater agent. So that's part of what is the service that, or is what is paid for the funds. This is going to be completely separate. This is going to basically make it so that way the money that's being here is we're being more self-sufficient. We're not asking for capital requests for management of certain properties every year. This is supposed to kind of provide us that luxury of being able to decide which properties need improvements and kind of have that, funding available to make those improvements happen if we see them fit.
Okay. And I mean, is there any barrier to moving on a motion tonight?
I mean, I wanted to give the commission an opportunity to read up on the benefits, but if the commission is confident with, me entertaining this and me kind of pursuing this, it's something that needs to be town voted on. So it's going to have to be on our at the next town meeting to secure this conservation fund. But then all the funds that go towards this will be kind of itemized as to what goes to this. So that way I can, come up with something. But if the commission wants me to kind of start the process with this, I can definitely kind of begin, analyzing and assessing and evaluating kind of what we can itemize for this for the future, and kind of set up kind of what my goals and kind of potential aspirations for making this something better for the community are in the future.
Yeah, and I think the argument to be made in front of town meeting is that this is a potential separate source, is separate from the town budget, in that charitable contributions can be added to it from members of the public who have particular desire to support these activities. So it really, to the way I look at it, it has no real disadvantages. So I would suggest that we move to enable John to move forward with this.
I'll second that.
Well, I can't technically make a motion, but I'm sure Lisa will jump out ahead and
So I'll make the motion.
all right, so we have Carrie making the motion and Dan seconding, and roll call vote starting with Lisa and Mark.
Right, it's to establish a conservation fund, right? Is that it?
Yes. Well,
that's correct.
Yes.
That would be an aye. Yes.
Aye. And Tama and Carrie.
Aye.
And Ron and Dan.
Aye. Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye too. All right. So any further issues we need to deal with before we adjourn?
No, I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving and they're enjoying all the leftovers as much as I am.
Yes.
Fortunately, no leftovers in my case.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thumbs up motion to adjourn? Yes?
So moved.
Okay, I don't see your thumb there, Dan.
Good night, everyone.
Well, I can run over there if you want.
That's all right. Good night.
All right, thank you.